With the release date of Chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune tomorrow, fast approaching, the window for time-passing, fever-induced crackpot theories is narrowing. With perhaps double the amount of content, at least on paper, that we will be getting with the upcoming release, there will be a significant amount of information to comb through, incorporate into theories, and speculate about what the future holds for the fate of the Fun Gang. So, while I'm fairly up to date with everything the game currently has to offer, I figured it was time to throw my metaphorical hat into the ring and tackle a theory on a topic that I, personally, have never actually felt strongly about one way or another. I only ask that you please ignore the jingle-jangle of the bells and the gaudy coloring of my hat as it is tossed. Firstly, there's one very important idea that needs to be established since it functions as basically the foundation of this theory. Our world is diegetic to Deltarune. If you've watched Andrew Cunningham's video, What Was So Good About Undertale Anyway, this concept will be familiar to you. I highly suggest you watch the video for the full understanding of this idea so that we are able to communicate on the same foundation, but I will give you the gist just in case. Undertale is a game whose universe functions by having a player. One way Undertale does this is by making saving and resetting something that characters within Undertale can know about and understand. An even better way Undertale does this is by establishing that Frisk is a different person from us. This is the same, as well as being more obviously the case, with Deltarune. It is made explicitly clear to us as the player that we are not Chris. We are not meant to be Chris. We are separate beings, and Deltarune knows this. Thus, our world is diegetic to Deltarune. Now, there is a reason that I say our world, or reality, is diegetic to Deltarune, rather than just us as a player. Of course, you could say that a player wouldn't exist without the reality they reside in, and while that's technically correct, there is a bit more we can point to as well. I want to reference another video by a different creator, Molly Stars' device theory. It's so cool and super worth a watch, and also a theory that I'm basically using as an assumption for this one, so I highly recommend. For the purpose of this video, I want to focus on the idea of the device being the program that we run in order to access Deltarune. If you remember when Deltarune was first released on October 31st in 2018, it was as a downloadable file titled survey_program. This program was commonly marked as potentially a virus, it wasn't, as well as sporting a very interesting terms and conditions message. The lead up to this release was done over Twitter, taken over by who we currently understand to be Gaster, as there are various consistencies present that I'm not going to get too far into at the moment. But it is implied that Gaster created the survey program, our device. He is what allowed us to bridge the gap between our world and the light world of Deltarune. There is some really interesting stuff surrounding the program naming conventions and how they differ between light and dark worlds, but that is Molly's area of expertise, so that's all I personally am going to talk about concerning the device theory. The important details to take away for understanding my theory is that Gaster reached out to us through Twitter in our reality to provide us with an access point to Deltarune. I would also like to mention the Spamton sweepstakes. I am aware that in the most recent newsletter, Toby explained how he only considered anything in the game itself to be canon. I don't, however, believe this negates the significance both of the information linked to from Spamton sweepstakes or Gaster's outreach on social media. Because if our reality is diegetic to Deltarune, it doesn't matter if the information gained this way is canon to Deltarune or not. It's part of our reality. It is still information that we take with us while interacting with the canon, universe, or story of Deltarune itself. Does that make sense? Even if it didn't really happen in the game, it's still telling us something about the characters. So here's the thing. If, 1, Deltarune exists as its own universe, and 2, that universe acknowledges, accepts, and depends on the existence of our own reality, then how do we reconcile the fact that, in our reality, Deltarune is just a game? Well, that is where this little guy comes in. Toby Fox has created a self-insert for both Undertale and Deltarune, the Annoying Dog. The Annoying Dog is able to interact with the characters, influence gameplay, and reach out to and point the player in whatever directions it so desires. If we take our two previous points and combine those with the fact that the creator of that entire reality also exists within it, well, the question becomes, how far are we willing to take this? I've decided to take it as far as I possibly can. The Annoying Dog is Deltarune's knight. Allow me to walk you down the same path I took that was responsible for kickstarting this whole idea in the first place. This is a room in Queen's Mansion. where these three swatchlings are watching a video taken of the night as the fountain was formed. I want you to take a look at this sentence, where the night creates the fountain by its own hand. That's right, it's. Now, I want to fast forward to Queen's monologue before she jumps into her giant robot form. Today, it deigned to create this world. There it is again. It. Now, why would the Darkners be referring to the night with its pronouns? I've only found one other mention of the night through pronoun use, and this comes from Susie, who uses them, and Queen also uses they right after using multiple its as well. So we can probably assume that its is not being used as a way to differentiate the night from Chris, who also uses they-them pronouns. All of you Chris is the Night believers, we'll talk later, at the end of the video when I go over logic holes and other interpretations. So why are Darkners using its pronouns for the night? Perhaps because the night isn't a person at all. And what character do we know that isn't a monster, isn't a human, but is still relevant to Deltarune? Perhaps a character that isn't too important, but not too unimportant either? So, anyway, I'm thinking to myself, haha, yeah, the annoying dog is a knight, lol, could you imagine? But then I started thinking about it, and as it turns out, I could imagine. What do we know about the annoying dog in Deltarune? Well, for one, we know it can do whatever it pleases. There's, of course, the dog check rooms for when things go wrong. We know it can play maracas, that it did donuts in the street causing that massive traffic pileup, a pileup that conveniently prevented us from going anywhere but the library, and subsequently the dark world within it. In fact, didn't we see the dog inside the computer lab working on a game pre-Maraca break? Sure, this, for the player, functions as a teaser and reassurance for the progress of Chapter 2, but let me point us again towards the foundation I established previously. Deltarune's universe accepts and depends on our own, and the creator of Deltarune exists within its universe itself. So, for someone living within Deltarune's reality, the creator of their world is inside the computer lab, working on a game. A game whose plot moves forward by the creation of dark fountains. Dark fountains that connect to dark worlds that function similarly and are often compared to video games. Okay, maybe we have something here. We know that this dog appears in the dark world sometimes too. According to the Deltarune wiki, Annoying Dog is one of a few returning characters from Undertale to have been seen or depicted in both the light world and the dark world. This trait is shared with Everyman and Icy. Now, obviously, as chapters progress, I'm sure more Undertale characters will be joining us in the dark worlds, most notably Toriel. But the fact that the Annoying Dog is among Everyman and Icy, two characters that are sources of mystery within the community, I think this is something worth thinking about, at least a little bit. The Annoying Dog can also appear within Chris's stat page. It could have potentially caused the traffic jam up in Cyber City, as it apparently has done this before, and it also commits vehicular manslaughter via Little Tyke's car should we go snooping around dumpsters in search of moss or eggs. However, this is only if we are progressing as intended. I'd like to bring up this chart created by Tumblr user Brixbraxium, which depicts a theory concerning the destiny, or story, being, or intended to be, told by Deltarune. For the purposes of my theory, this would mean that the story Toby Fox is telling is the intended course of history, or Take 1, a timeline concerning a prophecy and dark fountains, and do you see where I'm going with this? When we go off the intended path by pursuing the weird route, the Annoying Dog no longer appears. We are no longer following the story it laid out for us. Side note, I have no idea if the Annoying Dog can still show up in the stats page while on the weird route. If anyone has any information about this, I'd love to know. There is also one more way the Annoying Dog keeps us on track, and that is through those 3 cones that appear after Susie chooses to explore with Ralsei. It's not explicitly the Annoying Dog itself, but they are cones that slide into place on their own, with the dog's face on it, that bark when interacted with. I'm not sure that anyone who is familiar with the Annoying Dog looked at those cones and went, yep, that's probably just some random dog. I'd also like to point again towards the Annoying Dog can do whatever it wants, and as the creator of the game/universe we are participating in, we're going to be at its whims anyway. So that's about everything we have about the Annoying Dog in Deltarune, and honestly, not a whole lot to work with. So I also want to take a quick look at its presence in Undertale, since it could be worthwhile. First, I want to talk about the neutral ending, where the Annoying Dog ends up President of the Underground. This ending happens when you only kill the main character cast, Toriel, Papyrus, Undyne, and Mettaton. Everybody else must be left alive. It's interesting that the dog ends up becoming president, and not, say, one of the other Royal Guard members, or perhaps Muffet, or maybe one of the ghosts. These characters don't necessarily count as main ones, but they are the side characters most likely to leave a lasting impression on the player. Sand says in this ending, strangely, it seems like this is the best life for everyone, which honestly doesn't really make that much sense, but I suppose if the creator of your universe is suddenly the president, then, well, you can't really complain, can you? The other bit I want to mention is how the annoying dog makes most of its appearances around one of the most mysterious characters in the game. A character that people love, but that no one seems to know anything about, whether in their universe or in ours. That's right, I'm talking about Papyrus. This is not a Papyrus analysis video, so I'm not about to start digging into just how interesting and unknown he is as a character, but I'll give a short little rundown. The Snowden residents don't know where he came from. He's able to tell where Frisk is through a phone call. He levitates. He has control over his stats. He has control over his magic to the point that he is the only character that will never kill you, accidentally or otherwise. He remembers green grass. Flowey finds him interesting. He has a special attack that we never get to see because the annoying dog stops it from happening. This is significant. Papyrus is a big old question mark, and it's important to note the number of meta-aware or fourth wall breaking characters that have connections to him, annoying dog included. Overall, this doesn't really give us anything new to work with, but it does enforce some previous points. One, that the annoying dog can do whatever it wants, and two, that it is able to influence and shape the story that is being told. Makes sense? It's the one telling us the story in the first place. So, let's take a step back and put this all together. The annoying dog is Deltarune's knight. Deltarune, as a game, progresses its plot through the creation of dark fountains and the exploration of their dark worlds. These worlds are often compared to, and function similarly to, video games. The annoying dog, as Toby's self-insert, is both the creator/developer of the world of Deltarune and its story, and is guiding us, and Chris, towards whatever ending he dreamt up in that fever dream he had however many years ago now. We have seen the annoying dog working in the computer lab, forcing us to enter the library, interacting with us when we follow its intended path, and it has the ability and knowledge to create these worlds in the first place. Before we get into why this matters or is significant from a narrative standpoint, let's go over some rebuttals. The first thing that comes to mind was actually present near the beginning of this clown march. Dogs do not have hands. But, as I have said before, I am taking this as far as I possibly can and raise you these 3 points in response. A, B, and C. The annoying dog can do whatever it wants. It is, functionally, the god of Deltarune. Are these 3 counterpoints good counter-evidence? No, of course not. At least, I don't really think so, but I am including them anyway. The next point is one that I actually find really interesting, and it's about just how much the cyber world is tailored for Noelle specifically. Queen has practically all of her attention on Noelle, Noelle reminisces about Des wanting to take her to a big city, the scary parts are nostalgic, the Ferris wheel, the plugs that look like scary faces, the, once again, Dragon Blazers comparisons. This world does feel extremely Noelle-centric. Does this mean Noelle made the fountain? Does this mean that Des made the fountain? Well, my honest opinion is that it's probably too early to tell how much influence the creator of a dark fountain has on its world. Noelle probably used those computers really often, searching for her missing sister, opening every single email she ever received, running her blog, though not being explicitly canon, as Toby stated, but it still isn't worth writing off completely. If our reality exists, and Deltarune's reality accepts this, then we can still gain information from the Spamton sweepstakes without it actually being canon in the sense of what exists within the game or not. Besides, as Deltarune's creator, Toby, and thus the annoying dog, has all this information about Noelle anyway. It's also important to remember that the fountains work as portals or pathways, or devices, that connect us to the Dark Worlds. The inhabitants of the Dark Worlds themselves have periodically referred to a history pre-Fountain. They didn't come into existence at the drop of a pencil. Lastly, I want to talk about the Chris Knight theory. I know you've been very patient, or you've skipped to this part of the video. Either way, I'm talking about it now. I had said something earlier about how it's for the knight was not for the purpose of trying to differentiate the knight from Chris, and I want to clarify what I meant by that a little. Since we know Chris uses they-them pronouns, as well that they-them pronouns tend to be the default way of referring to someone whose gender is unknown, the fact that Darkners are using both it's and they-them pronouns is important. It could mean that Toby isn't necessarily trying to unambiguate who is being referred to. But if that was the case, why use both sets? If I'm trying to make the night seem different from Chris, I could use it's to do so. If I didn't care whether people saw they them and connected that to Chris, then I would just use they them. But we have both. That is why I think we aren't referring to Chris as the knight here. Usually, I see the points for this being how Chris has knight-like clothing in the Dark Worlds. Queen shows a knife when talking about the creation of the Cyberworld fountain, and we see Chris make a fountain at the end of Chapter 2. But Chris makes a fountain at the end of Chapter 2. The last big hurrah of the cyber world being that whole speech about how any Lightner could make a dark fountain. And when they're getting ready to binge movies with Susie, she talks about how cool it would be to have Rousey and Lancer and all their friends come to the light world. Basically, this information is given to us, and subsequently Chris, with all the subtlety of a nail gun. Chris, who is the monarch of red herrings and thrives off of pulling pranks, who probably doesn't want to be a heart on a chain their whole life, following someone else's plan, someone else's story. Anyway, that's all I have for rebuttals. Let's move on to the last bit. Before we wrap up, I want to say if you made it this far, thank you. Also, congratulations. In my opinion, this is the most important part of the video. Here's the thing about Deltarune. Toby has told us that the game only has one ending, and that there is something more important than reaching the end. He's told us that Deltarune's ending came to him in a fever dream, and he thus became determined to create it. I know it's a cliche, maybe the real treasure was the friends we made along the way shtick, but in order for that ending to be reached, the journey, or the plot, needs to take us there in a satisfying way. And perhaps the more important thing isn't even exploring the world of Deltarune or experiencing the story. Maybe it is something more like finding Des, as I've seen some people speculate. Basically, what this all boils down to is that I think the annoying dog being the knight matters because the knight doesn't matter. The dark fountains are our ways to access different worlds, different stories, different experiences, and to shape Chris and Susie and their friends as well. I don't think it's too hard to say that that, in and of itself, could be purpose enough. And I think Toby, as the annoying dog, knowing that there is only one end outcome, but also that there is something more important than reaching it, is guiding us in that more important direction by creating the fountains in order to tell the story that needs to be told. The identity of the knight doesn't matter, because they aren't making the fountains for some nefarious purpose, or for some grand scheme, or secret overarching plan. They're making the fountains for Chris and Susie. They're making the fountains for us. Couldn't anyone make a dark fountain if they were determined enough? Couldn't anyone tell a story, create a world, if they wanted to? Isn't that more important than reaching the end? Does it matter who created the fountains if their purpose is simply to exist? Personally, outside of this theory and other speculation, I'm not sure I even believe that there is a knight. I'm, at this point, much more inclined to believe that each fountain is being made by a different person every chapter. It could be a possible explanation both for why Chris made the fountain at the end of Chapter 2, and why the cyber world was so specifically about Noelle. Anyway, I know I'm biased. The identity of the knight isn't something that ever actually interested me, which is at least half of why this theory even exists in the first place. If they become some super relevant and interesting character in future chapters, then I'm looking forward to it. I'm open to changing my mind. It's just not something that the majority of my focus is on at the moment. The identity of the knight, the journey we take to reach the ending, finding Des, secret bosses, there's a lot to look forward to. It seems we'll just have to trust the dog.